taking a stamp on the game.
I refereed the FA Cup final, fortunately. You know, probably the biggest honour domestically you can get in refereeing. And on the morning of the game, I was taken to one side by one of the suits from the FA and just reminded of the importance of this game and the image it was sending across the world. And I'm thinking to myself, do you know, Jeff, you must be fucking stupid. Here you are, refereeing the FA Cup final, having been in football all your life, and finally, on the morning of the game, someone's telling me the importance of the FA Cup final and telling me that this game is being... I didn't know that. Honestly, you could have knocked me down with a fella. But what they were turning round and saying is, we want you to do it properly, but, you know, the image and everything else... Bloody hell, if they can trust you to referee the FA Cup final, surely you know that by now.
Yeah, you'd like to think so.
You know, I mean, my FA Cup final, which incidentally was the final game of my professional career, and that was something I can't remember had been done before because, you know, thinking of the after-dinner circuit and thinking of the... autobiography that's in the pipeline, nutting Roy Keane in the centre circle, the cup final, might just help book sales, mightn't it? So you just didn't get those opportunities, but I'm going into that game thinking, please God, I just don't want any controversy, because if you have a bad game, there's always next week, there's always next season. With it being the last game of your career, that was what you were going to be remembered for forever. Yeah. And fortunately, one yellow card, Dennis Wise, which I think most people will give me credit for.
Who was the final? Manu Millwall.
Yeah, and Dennis played, and he tried the old skin nip on Ronaldo, picking him up off the floor, helping him.
You saw it?
Yes, of course I saw it. Yeah. So I had to do something about it. But, you know, I mean, the man, Gary Neville saw it, a few of the United players saw it, but they knew what was happening and had a word with him, and that was it. And you come off at the end of the game, and this was the feeling every Saturday, every Tuesday. Whew. And sometimes it wasn't necessarily down to you, because if 22 footballers have decided this is the local derby, this is the local war, we are just going to kick fuck out of each other, then it doesn't matter whether you're Kalina, who you are, you can't control that. I mean, my mate Howard Webb, refereeing the World Cup final, brilliant guy, brilliant referee, and that particular day, the two teams, was Holland and...
I remember it, yeah.
Was it Spain? I can't remember now.
Kick fuck out of each other.
And they did. And, you know, if the players decide... That's taken out of the referee's control. You can go in with the right attitude, try to settle things down. But if the players have decided we're not having any of that, then you just go along for the ride. And sometimes, you know, if it's a bottom of the table, mid-table clash, you get away with it. But if it's the highest profile game, then... You know, if the referee's had to send 3 players off in the first half hour, he then gets accused of spoiling the game. Yeah. If he doesn't send the players off and it ends up as a World War III, he should have got control of it sooner. So people say, I will always defend referees. That's not the case. I'll always try and look at it from a referee's point of view. But sometimes, no matter how good you are, no matter how experienced you are, it's in the hands of the gods.
How soon before the cup final do you know you're doing it? Because that's the big call-up, isn't it? And I imagine there's a bit of rivalry there.
Well, you see, a lot of things come into account. It is a typical FA decision. I mean, I later found out that there was a lot of people again in positions of power, one of them being David Ellery, who used to be a colleague of mine, high up on the referees committee. They didn't want me to get the FA Cup final because I hadn't been a FIFA referee. And they seemed to think that you needed that experience. You could referee Tottenham versus Arsenal, Liverpool versus Everton, Man United versus Man City, but because it's the FA Cup final and you didn't have the white badge, they didn't want you to have it. And that year, ironically, I mean, I've followed Borough from being a kid and then post-refereeing career, obviously following them, and I work for the club now. But Borough, through the vast majority of my life, to put it into a footballing term, have been shite. You know, we've never got in chance of winning anything. And ironically, in my last season, and I was in line to referee the League Cup final, and that's the fucking year Borough hit Blob, don't they? And I'm at the Riverside for the second leg against Arsenal, and Borough win, and they're going to Wembley. And I always remember a guy called Jim Ashworth, former Football League referee. He'd have refereed you lads. And he was in charge of the appointments, and he came across to me and he said, look, you look as if you're happy, Jeff. He says, well, you probably heard on the grapevine. He says, I've obviously got some bad news for you. You were going to referee the League Cup final this year, but Borough have, done you for that. You're obviously not going to be going to Cardiff to referee.
Bittersweet.
And I just turned around and I said, hey, I was a Borough fan before I started refereeing. I'll be a Borough fan after I've finished refereeing. Am I happy that Middlesbrough are going to the first sort of major cup final in the history? And I was cock-a-hope. I'm a fan. Yeah. And, that particular season, the way it panned out, I refereed at Leicester City on the Saturday afternoon, drove straight down to Cardiff with family and friends to watch the Borough against Bolton. Mike Riley refereed it, and Sam Allardyce came out post-match with a wonderful statement where he turned round and said, we'd rather have had Jeff Winter referee it, and he's a fucking Borough fan. He wasn't too keen on Mike Riley. And then as things panned out, it's getting towards the end of the season, and people, as referees and people, Jeff, you must have a chance of the cup final. But because I wasn't on the international list, it wasn't probably going to happen. And then cup semi-final weekend in the old days where they used to have one on the Saturday and one on the Sunday. And Sunderland played Millwall. And was it Man United Arsenal? Or I can't remember who was in the other one. But I was refereeing at Liverpool on the Sunday. It's funny, there's another little bit of a story comes out of this because that was my last ever visit to Anfield. So when I did my book, I put a piss take in it, and I'd put the Liverpool fan, at the full-time whistle, the Liverpool fans burst into a round of applause. With the Scousers being so knowledgeable about football, they probably knew it was my final game, and it was a show of appreciation to me. With two asterisks after it, like trying to say... Yeah, fuck off. Tongue in cheek. Of course, when the book come out and it's been proofread, I've never read the book since. It is a little bit arrogant and egotistical to sit around a swimming pool on holiday.
With your face, where you just lift it out.
What are you reading? Oh, I'm reading my autobiography. Do I love myself? So I've never actually read it, and then all the shit come out because they missed the asterisks off, and people were going... Fucking it, does he love himself? Thinking the crowd at Liverpool. But in fact, it created a little bit of a talking point, and I'm thinking, a few more books sold, that's not a problem. So I've had this weekend, refereed at Anfield for the final time. End of the game, Mark Halsey was my fourth official, and he's had a word with Liverpool. And even though referees are sort of hated by anyone and everyone, within the game... at home, if people come round our house, they'd kill me round here. In the porch, I've got a Newcastle United shirt, but it was signed by Sir Bobby, Alan Shearer, all the lads, and it was presented to me with a little plaque on the bottom saying, in recognition of your services. And, your final season, you'll get something like that. Mark Halsey's had a word at Liverpool, and I've got Stephen Gerrard's match-worn shirt. Now, I refereed Stephen Gerrard's debut game where he came on as a late substitute. I was fourth official at Wembley when he made his debut as a substitute for England, and always one of my favourite players. He then ends up managing Rangers. So I've had a good weekend. I'm going home. There's a few bob in the pocket from the races. I've got Stephen Gerrard's signed shirt. The bit on you'll know it, on the M62 where you go over where that lunatic said you're not building a motorway through my farm. Just going by there and the mobile goes, and it was Joe Guest from the FA. And this was sort of, obviously, Grand National time. It was April. They don't appoint the referee till after the semi-final for the obvious reason. It could be geographically and their team or whatever. And this Sunday evening, the phone goes, and in a way, you're thinking, why is the fixtures appointment secretary from the FA ringing me on a Sunday night at 7:00? And he told me, and I don't know how I drove home the rest of the way because you just float in. And then you've got the build-up to the game, probably a month or so after that. So that was, it was special. And in a way, with it being my last game, it was something to look back on.
Do you know if Sunderland got to the final, would that have affected you? I know it's not Middlesbrough, but would it geographically?
I was told not, but you see, geography in England is something that people just don't understand, especially Southerners. You'd have referees like David Ellery, who lived in Harrow, refereeing at Tottenham, Arsenal. You'd have Steve Bennett and Barry Knight, who were in Kent, refereeing Crystal Palace. And, I mean, it wasn't worth picking up your X's for. You were about 10 miles from the ground. I referee at Sunderland or Newcastle. I remember refereeing Sunderland versus Watford and Graham Taylor going absolutely berserk that I'm on the doorstep. Has he never seen a fucking map? Sunderland's 25, 30 mile away. Newcastle's 45 mile away. But then the fans tipped it over the other way. You smoggy bastard. You're going to give Newcastle nothing. You're going to give Sunderland nothing. And if the borough were involved in a relegation scrap, then, as they usually were, that was brilliant. Not for the borough or not for the fans, but brilliant for me, because I was getting all the top of the table games because they wouldn't appoint me. If say it was West Ham and Derby and Borough and someone else involved at the bottom of the table, they wouldn't give me a game featuring any of these teams, just not because I'm going to do anything, but the perception.
Yeah, just said the actual.
But now it doesn't matter. Anthony Taylor referees at Man United and Man City, and he lives in Greater Manchester. They don't seem to bother about that. And, people often say that, you'd give Newcastle nothing. It's a game of football, and when you go out there as the referee, it's your reputation, it's your career. And if you're going to be bent, which is the only way that people are describing it, it's going to be so obvious. And I'm not clever enough to cover that up. Refereeing a vital Middlesbrough game, and Middlesbrough just missed the 4th consecutive penalty in the first 25 minutes of the game. I think people might put 2 and 2 together there.
Is there any high-profile decisions where you look back and think, I got that wrong?
In hindsight.
Probably my first marriage. I loved her at the time, and she did provide me with 3 wonderful children, but, upon hindsight. And the other one, you might have been going to ask me about embarrassing moments, but the embarrassing moment stroke wrong decision. I don't know what you lads did as players, but was always a queue for the loo before you went out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would go for a wee, 10 minutes to 3, get back into my changing room, and 8 minutes to 3, I don't know why I'd go for another way, because it's just something that's going on. It's your preparation and all the rest of it. Now, and obviously you used to watch what you ate before a game, but I think my decision that I would change possibly was in a pre-season friendly, not far from me, Bedford Terrace, Billingham Town versus Darlington. And with it just being a pre-season friendly, I don't know whether I'd followed my pre-match diet and pre-match routine properly through and through. 25 minutes into the game, when you get that twinge.
Oh, I know it well.
You've had that.
I know it well.
Well, I've had this twinge, and I've looked down at my watch, looking at 20 minutes to go. We'll be all right. And then I've looked at my watch again, and there's only 18 minutes to go. And then I look at my watch again, there's 17 minutes to go. I'm not going to last till half time. I'm not going to make this. Now, you might think Billingham Town versus Darlington isn't the biggest game on the calendar, but Darlington's only 15 mile away. It's a pre-season friendly. There's probably about 2,500 Darlington fans at the ground. So there's an atmosphere and there's nowhere really to hide. And there's an injury or something, a stoppage in play. and I nip across towards the halfway line. Young linesman, giving them a bit of experience at a game like that. I've just handed him the whistle, grabbed the flag off him and said, go on, you finish the first half off, bit of experience.
So you're doing him a favour?
Doing him a favour, but what a star Jeff is. Down the tunnel, into the dressing room. I won't be too explicit, but I was in there a few minutes and came out half a stone lighter. Nipped back out, waited for another break in play. I've still got the Linos flag in my hand. Nipped onto the pitch, wrestled the whistle off the young lad, give him the flag back. Refereed the final 15 minutes, 10 minutes of the game, of the half. We're coming off at half time. Head across, the line has come across to us, the young lad. Oh, thanks for that, Jeff. It was a good experience. Well, why did you choose to do that then? I said, well, when the game was stopped, I said, I know, I looked down and my bootlace had snapped. And I thought, you can imagine in the middle of the game, having to stop the game, fannying about getting a new, it would have drawn all the attention. I just thought it was easier to go off, put a new lace in. Now, by this time, we've walked down the tunnel, turned round the bend, and just opened the referee's door and gone into the referee's room. The other linesman was a little bit more experienced now, saying. So I just put a new lace in because the other one was knackered. And the other liner just turns up and goes, as we walked into the dressing room, goes, and did it smell of shite as well? And so, in fairness, biggest mistake probably was what I had to eat prior to that game, and not making sure I was ready to last 45 minutes. And that wasn't the fucking answer you would expect, was it?
It's caught us off guard, I'll be honest.
Do you, obviously, you get whatever referee gets paid. Do you get paid a bonus for doing the cup final?
No.
You don't get any extra or anything?
In fact, until a few years before I did it, thank God, you didn't even get a fee because it was deemed... You get, the little gold medal, similar, I'm presumed, to the winners and losers medals, and the honour of refereeing the FA Cup final and getting your gold medal for doing it, that was deemed as reward enough. And it was, I'm sure it was probably, I might be totally wrong, but I'm sure it was only in the 1990s or something like that you ended up getting a match fee. So, the big, that sums up some people and the old FA principles. They're telling you before the game, this is the most watched game in world football, domestic game in world football, but we can't afford to give you a fee for it.
All that pressure, but then you do it for free.
Having said that, when you consider something that only I think happens in this country, you look at up in Scotland where the top referees in Scotland have refereed the Scottish Cup final 5 or 6 times. In England, until a couple of years ago when they decided, because of the COVID, when the cup final was played behind closed doors, they gave it to a referee who'd refereed the game previously, because they said, well, after COVID, if you were going to get to referee the FA Cup final for once in your career, it would be lovely to have a full house and it'd be a proper day. And that was the first time in the history of the FA Cup that the same person had refereed more than one final. So you're only ever going to get one FA Cup final or one League Cup final in your career. And when you consider there's only one a season and how many referees there are, there's far better referees than me have never ever got that honour.
See, that's a bit of a shambles in itself. Surely the best referee...
Well, that happens in rugby league and things like that.
The best referee's got to referee the
final.
The cup final. Whether
Looking
you've
at
had
like
it
a point
once, twice,
system.
5 times, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a bit like...
Hey, I tell you something.
There's a lot of politics.
The politics in referees, the refereeing, that have been the same person sucking off the appointment secretary every year. My God.
Would you have had 5 or 6?
No.
So a lot of attention.
Joking. I'd have had none, I can tell you. I'd have had none. Graham Pollard would have done 23 on the bounce.
I was going to ask you about the Red Wine Club.
Oh, Graham Pole is a fucking arsehole. And he's come running up to us, full in the face, screaming and shouting. I mean, the fuck you going on about? I've given you the free kick. From sending Roy Keane off at Southampton, I didn't referee Manchester United again. I got both sets of fans booing me at the same time. Go on, big man, you send me off. Make your day. They're going to report you to the FA because you threatened to punch him. A couple of minutes later, they put a shot and it goes into Rose's head. I just run alongside him and go, that was fucking shit. And deep dill dunk, he fucking stunk. And he did, it was this like you fucking lot.
We were laughing
Giving the likes of Danny Mills a platform to slag me off. Well, now it's payback time.